greatest Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Mike Allen. As always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of the episodes from the 90s Spider-Man TV show.
That's right, and we have a very special guest this week. Infamous radio and podcast host Junk Food Jeff is joining us. Hey, Jeff.
Ooh.
How are you? Nice to be here. Pleasure to break down some Spider-Man cartoons with you guys.
Yes,
yeah, it's
so
going to be fun.
I gathered from our conversation that you're largely unfamiliar with the show. Is that correct?
Largely unfamiliar is a understatement. Very much not familiar is an understatement. So
Okay.
I know who Spider-Man is, and I know who Mary Jane is, and that's about the extent of, from these episodes at least, who I know who people are.
Gotcha.
So you've seen like the movies, like have you seen all the movies or most
Yeah,
of them?
and I collect the Funko Pops and I sell Funko Pops, so I'm familiar with people from that, I guess the Spider-Verse, as you would say. I'm familiar with them, but just not in this iteration usually.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, so here's the thing. Usually we summarize the episodes before we review them, so Josh is going to review, or he's going to summarize the first one, right, Josh?
Yeah. So the first one we're going to be talking about is Season 4, Episode 4, Partners in Danger, Chapter 4, The Return of Kraven. So we saw Kraven like earlier in one of the earlier seasons, and he's back now. Just to kind of like recap what's going on right now in this universe. Green Goblin opened up like a portal, and MJ is now missing in another dimension.
Right.
And Spidey's kind of like dealing with that emotionally. Black Cat now has superpowers and like almost like a super soldier serum type of power where she can get like super strong. We start off this episode and something weird is going on with the Hardy Foundation. Peter is there visiting his friend, and then Kraven shows up. So he puts on his Spidey costume and he starts fighting Kraven. We're not really sure why he's there, but he's like looking for something. He starts like beefing with Felicia Hardy's mom. Turns out that he's like looking for this serum, and this serum, this like potion, is very similar to everybody else in this cartoon that like they drink this potion and they become strong. So right. Kraven is a person, but when he drinks this potion and he kind of goes into like the berserk mode, he becomes Kraven the Hunter. So Spidey, Peter Parker is kind of worried that he's turned back into Kraven the Hunter. Long story short, it turns out that his love interest, Gloria, was sick, so he gave her some of the serum too to make her stronger. But in doing so, it turned her into like this wild type of character like Kraven the Hunter is. And we know her from the comics as Calypso. So there's this huge battle that ends up taking place in like a zoo area. And he needed the formula to study it, to give it to her, to kind of like reverse the effects of like her being berserk. Honestly, it wasn't a very good one. A lot of stuff just kind of like happens.
Okay.
I know, Mike, you say this a lot for the cartoon. It's just so fast paced.
Yes.
We don't really get a second to like understand or like soak in what's happening. I felt like in this episode and the other two we're going to be talking about, it was like doubled. It was insane how fast everything goes in these few episodes. But they end up, Felicia and Peter end up teaming up to take down Kraven. He explains what's going on, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. We'll just give you the formula then. And they give it to her. They give it to him, and he goes up to Calypso. like reduces the like amount of like wild she is, and then the two of them run off together, and that's really the end of the episode.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'll just say quickly. So, Jeff, this is something we've talked about on the show. This show, more than any cartoon I've ever seen, like usually when you're watching a show, it's like, you know, if I'm acting, my character says a line, the line finishes, then the next thing happens, like someone throws a punch, then the car drives away. In this show, things are overlapping to the extent that like someone's saying a line, and before they even finish this important line of dialogue, there's already like a gun shooting at the character this way, and something's happening over here, and so it's actually really hard to follow. Like you can't look away for a second or you'll miss something, and that's what I find with every episode of the show. But without saying any more, I just want to know what your first impression was of this episode.
So like Josh just finished saying, it's like they're trying to cram like an hour and a half storyline into 19 minutes. That's the first thing I noticed when I watched this thing. Right. And first off, as far as the animation goes, it reminded me a lot of the old G.I. Joe cartoon when I looked at it. A lot of like the older male characters look exactly like the characters from G.I. Joe. Right. The animation was good. I was pretty impressed with the animation. I thought it was kind of funny that in every episode there's no real guns. Everyone's using just blaster pistols all the time, which is so ludicrous.
Yep.
The other thing I noticed from this show that I thought was ridiculous was everybody has this like lab that they're working in for whatever reason in every episode. And it's this majorly fortified lab that also has like a hole in the roof for anyone to just come landing in at any point if they want. So if you can't make it through the door, just try flying through the roof. And so there's a wide open square there for no apparent reason for everyone to come in. And these people in these shows are very irresponsible around this equipment. They're always pushing lasers in the opposite directions of things and shooting things. And I don't know. I thought it was crazy. The other thing, I was so used to Peter Parker being a like young dweeb nerd, that in this he's drawn more like a like college jock type that's got like a nerd voice for some reason.
Sure, good point. I agree. Yeah.
And his outer monologue that they use to progress the story becomes so annoying after a while because you're just constantly listening to this guy's nerdy Peter Parker voice for at least 18 minutes of the 19. You have to listen to this guy. Right. I wonder what Mary Jane is up to right now. Oh, I can't think about that right now. I've got to go head over to the zoo to go see what's going on with Kraven the Hunter. Right. Oh my God, I can't believe it. But I'm sure I'm going to miss Mary Jane. I got to tell you that much. And what's going on with Black the Cat? And it's like, oh my God, dude, stop thinking for 2 seconds.
And it's also confusing because his inner monologue has there's no way to distinguish it between his actual dialogue.
Because his mouth doesn't move either way. Right, so you never have any idea what's being said out loud and what's his inner monologue or outer monologue.
Yeah, so Josh, what was your take on this one?
Yeah, it wasn't super great. I also felt like all three of these episodes were almost the exact same story. Right?
Well, they were kind of continuing along that one thread of the storyline where the one thread that I noticed was like, for some reason, this guy loses the love of his life, and the first chick that pays attention to him, immediately he's all over like a dirty shirt. And she's very flirtatious considering she's apparently in love with Morbius there. And it goes on and on forever. It feels like, and like every time they talk, she's always like holding him in some sort of loving embrace, even when like he's being a jerk to her at the beginning saying, "We're not partners." And then she's like, I don't know, for some reason, so in love with the idea of wanting to be this guy's partner. And then by the time when he finally says they're partners in the one episode, she's just so over the moon about it, holding him tightly against him. And I'm like, don't these two already have love interests that they are literally on the hunt for as we speak?
Yeah. You know, it's confusing because did you see the Spider-Man movies with what's his name? The second one. What was
Andrew Garfield?
Andrew Garfield?
That's the only ones I did see were Andrew Garfield.
Really? Okay. So those movies had Gwen Stacy, not Mary Jane. But in this cartoon, Felicia Hardy is kind of standing in for Gwen Stacy. So she kind of has all of Gwen Stacy's plot lines. But she's also Black Cat, who in the comics is in love with Spider-Man. But in this story, it was convenient for her to also be in love with Michael Morbius. So it's like they just give her all these, they force all these characteristics onto her, but they don't really add up or make much sense.
And her mask is literally, it looks like someone drew a butterfly on her face.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the whole Prince Adam He-Man thing where nobody literally has any idea that they're the same person.
Yeah.
And then the one episode when they're like, let's take our masks off and show each other whatever. And it's like, I want to say, chick, we already know what you look like. You just got to take the black circle off you, the black, like...
I know.
Off your
right.
face, and you know exactly who you are. Same hair, same voice, same everything.
And I kind of forgot. I'm like, oh yeah, like they're in the same scene together like 5 minutes later, right?
Right.
Getting into a car together and stuff like that. It is pretty ridiculous.
There's one, I think it's in the zoo episode, or maybe it's this one with the zoo, when it's like Peter Parker has to act like, oh, hey, there's chaos going on at the zoo. And he has to act like, oh, well, I'm going to go over here now. And then he has to go and get changed into his get into his Spider-Man costume. And then literally like 2 minutes later, she's like, yeah, I should also go see what's going on. And then she goes and gets in her costume, which just seems like at least Superman had like a phone booth to get changed in. These guys are kind of making it seem like they're going into the local public bathroom to get changed into the Superman outfit.
Yeah. So this is probably your first exposure to Kraven the Hunter. What did you think of him?
All joking aside, I think the storyline is like, I like the way that they set the storyline up where the last time you saw Dr. Kravinoff, he was helping Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. I don't know that, but they said that in the episode. Mm-hmm. And then when he sees him now, he's like basically telling Spider-Man to just, I don't want to do anything to you, just leave me alone. He doesn't want to explain that he's trying to get the serum for Gloria. He's just like, at the same time, he's like, look, we were friends last time we saw. I don't want any heat with you. Just let me do what I got to do. And they don't really understand his ulterior motive until the end of the episode. So that was actually a interesting story twist, I guess, in that regard, where you're not really sure, if he's good or bad. And then they play it out at the end for you and kind of lay it out where you almost have like sympathy for what Kraven was going through, and you almost feel like Spider-Man could have maybe pumped the brakes a bit and trying to be the hero in this situation.
Sure. Here's the thing. I'm also rewatching the Superman cartoon from the 90s at the same time. Like, did you ever see that one, Jeff?
I think so.
Okay, or do you remember the Batman cartoon from the 90s?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So it's the same creators doing Superman, and I do like it, but those creators, to me, don't click as well as they do with the Batman character. And the animation was surprisingly disappointing in a lot of episodes of Superman, and so I'm actually liking the animation more in these Spider-Man ones. Like, now that I'm comparing them side by side, I do really appreciate the designs of these characters more, like the way they redesigned like the Vulture and the Scorpion. And the animation is pretty good. Like you said, it does remind me of something like G.I. Joe or something, It's really appropriate.
And a lot of those cartoons from that era, if you talk from like 1983 to like 95, 96, those cartoons were essentially just 20-minute advertisements for upcoming action figures that they had planned.
Totally.
So
100%.
if they had an idea what they wanted for Vulture and they couldn't make it work for the action figure, well then they'll just change the cartoon to match the action figure as opposed to vice versa.
100%.
So
right.
and it's also when they do stuff like that, it also makes it almost maybe proprietary to that genre of Spider-Man. So now people can say, oh, this is the animated Spider-Man Kraven as opposed to the comic book Kraven or the movie Kraven or the whatever Kraven. So, like, their costumes and stuff are ridiculous. If you put that in place of like this is happening in real life and Kraven shows up wearing that yellow jacket tucked into his pants that's unbuttoned all the way to the waist with his fur around the outside and stuff, it looks like something. You would think the guy was completely insane for a completely different reason.
Right.
But I don't know, it adds, I can see why kids would like the show and get drawn into watching it. Like you said, the animation wasn't like, 3D, 4D animation, but you got the point of where they were at all times. You knew when he was slinging his web, the graphics were about as lowbrow as you could possibly get. It was literally just yellow lines going this way and this way to signify lights and stuff. And it's just him talking to himself, swinging between buildings for 3 minutes in between each scene.
But did you notice the 3D? Because you mentioned 3D animation. There actually was. I don't know if it was used in this episode, but when he swings through buildings, it is primitive CGI animation. I'm actually looking at it right now.
Pretty rough.
Yeah. It's a little bit better than it was in season 1, but it's still rough.
I was gonna say they've definitely improved it since. Yeah. That was something I noticed. Like, there's actual texture on some of the
buildings
and stuff like that. They've got street signs. Mm-hmm. But it was much worse in the first few seasons for sure.
Right. All right, well, we probably said enough about this episode. We can jump to the next one. I mean, do you want to we can rate them all at the end. I don't know if we can rate them individually. We usually rate them. But, okay, so the next one, oh boy, here we go, season 4. Sorry, I'm jumping around here.
So this one is season 4, episode 5, called Partners. Mm-hmm. It has a very similar storyline and premise as episode 6 that we're going to be talking about. It's practically the same exact episode, just with the bad guys kind of switched around. We have 2 of Spidey's well-known villains popping up, recurring villains, kind of the big bad guys. In this episode, we have Aleister Smythe and what's the
Scorpion?
No. The guy that got turned into a baby. What's his name?
Oh,
Silvermane.
Geez, Silvermane. That was insane. But anyway, okay.
So
that baby was my favorite part of that whole episode.
So ridiculous.
It's crazy.
So these 2 are teaming up, Aleister Smythe and Silvermane, to turn Silvermane back into an adult and to age him back up into adulthood and not an old man, which he originally was. And to do this, they need either the Scorpion or the Vulture's DNA. So their plan is to kidnap the Black Cat and use her as blackmail almost, or an ultimatum for Spider-Man to go and capture either Scorpion or the Vulture and bring one of them back to their lair so they can do this experiment and de-age them, because they have some sort of science in them from when they got turned into supervillains. They don't really explain it a whole lot, but so they get strapped to a big machine at the end. Spider-Man is also strapped to it because I guess he's got spider powers, which will help them in some way. So this all starts happening after Spidey captures Scorpion. Vulture shows up to save the day, takes Scorpion out and Spider-Man out, and then he goes into the machine and he actually puts his old age into Silvermane, but he does it completely. So Silvermane's an old man, and now Vulture is young again, and he flies away. And then there's this big battle that ensues between everybody fighting everybody, and then the entire building explodes, and they're all able to get away at the end. And I'll kind of briefly go over the next episode too. Then I might as well, because it's the same exact thing, except for it's Kingpin that wants to be immortal. And who does he capture again?
I'm zipping.
Michael
he
Morbius?
captures Morbius, right?
Yeah.
He captures Michael Morbius, and it's pretty much the same exact thing where they hire Shocker to show up to be a bodyguard for Morbius as they suck the life out of him to make Kingpin this immortal figure, and Felicia Hardy, who's in love with Michael Morbius, kind of stops them at the end of the day, and Michael Morbius kind of runs away instead of being turned back into a human. It's the same exact episode, really, just
But
kind of like.
but was he half switched at that point?
Right? Yeah,
Because he was like the super vampire at the end, and now he's just like kind of like a sparkly vampire, Twilight type vampire at this point.
Right? Yeah. At the beginning of the episode, he's like Man Bat essentially.
Right.
And then by the end of the episode, he's back to his like regular Morbius state. They're both honestly kind of crummy episodes, I thought.
You know,
like maybe my least favorite episodes we've talked about so far on the show.
Well, see, for me, it's hard for me to judge because I was mostly focusing on the animation, and I was loving the animation so much that I wasn't really critiquing the plot in my head, but I did like the fact that it was a little bit smaller scale. Like, one of the problems with a lot of episodes is it's like the Kingpin and that other guy that looks like Two-Face. So many episodes are just them doing stuff and the people flying around. I thought these ones were a little bit smaller scale, so that's why I like them. But other than that, the thing I loved about this episode, like Jeff mentioned, is the freaking baby. Like, that is an insane idea out of like a 1960s DC comic, and I can't believe the show did it. But I thought it was great.
The worst part, it literally sounds like a baby's voice, so I'm wondering if they got a baby or if they hired someone who does a very good baby voice as an actor.
Good.
Well, it was probably like a 3 or 4 year old that could talk well, but sounds
there
like
was
a baby.
they gave him some dialogue that there's no way that I could picture a 3 or 4 year old crushing in any case.
Right. Well, so Jeff, what did you think of this one overall?
The second one or the third one?
Second one.
Yeah. So the second one was the one with not Morbius, but who was the what was the villain of the second one we watched?
Kingpin. Oh, Aleister Smythe and Silvermane.
Yeah. So that whole storyline was interesting to me. I thought that old man Vulture was like this curmudgeon-y type dude, but he's still wearing his like superhero outfit. It was very weird.
And he's
then when he
completely
converts
jacked
back
still.
into like a young do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like you picture like Al Bundy when he puts his Polk High jersey on. That's what old man Vulture wearing his like superhero outfit for some reason looks like to me.
Yeah. Talking
about the old days. There was speaking of the guy that looks like Two-Face, who is that? I wanted to ask.
We talked about him last.
It's like we've seen him in 700 episodes and we can't remember his name.
But is he like a canon Marvel character?
I believe so.
If he is, he looks completely different in this. I'm going to find out. Hold on a sec here. But yeah, I'm going to research it.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is Peter Parker's friend, who actually looks like he should play Peter Parker, another redheaded, nerdy, skinny guy.
Flash.
Harry Osborn?
Harry
Osborn, right? The skinny guy?
Yeah. So if you've never watched the show before, the very end of the first episode where he shows up at his house and he invites him in, and then it's very like kind of homoerotic, and then the door closes and the show's over. Yeah. And I'm like, what is going on in this neighborhood? He's all over all these girls, guys. Boy, he's a well scouted young man of town.
Yeah, that's his like longtime best friend. I think actually in the show they were already roommates at one point, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
or maybe that was in the comics. I can't remember. They moved in together, but
just with the dialogue and everything, if you watching it cold, comes off as super weird.
It does. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mike, I know you said these few episodes didn't feel like too much was going on. I just felt like there were so many in episode 4 or episode 5 in particular. There were just so many characters, that felt really unneeded. Like, did we need Smythe and Silvermane and Silvermane's daughter and Scorpion and Vulture?
Yeah,
and Felicia, in a 19-minute episode too. By the way,
yeah, it was just like a lot. It felt really weird that the Vulture was even there at all with Scorpion. Why wouldn't they just make it about the Vulture, since he's the one that is like aging and de-aging? So like, get rid of Scorpion.
But then they needed Scorpion to make the big save at the very end, which was the plot twist of that, I guess. But like, I don't know. I see what you're saying too. It's like Too much crammed into 19 minutes of storytelling. The one episode when they went looking for Kraven, the first one, everywhere that they assumed he was going to be, everybody shows up there and they're there. I don't know if you remember. They went to the clock tower. Everybody's there. They go to the zoo. They go to the park, and it's like, okay. It's almost like slightly unbelievable.
You know what? That is... It's like now that if you look at the series as an overview, it seems like Kingpin and Smythe and that other guy are in almost every single episode, and I don't understand why. And again, comparing it to something like Batman or Superman, those episodes are totally standalone. They never connect. This show, it's like one long continuous thing. It might be one of the first American cartoons that did that, I think. Or no, X-Men. X-Men probably did it too, right?
Right.
Didn't it?
But that was also...
Same time. Almost exactly the same time. Yeah. Like within a year. But
I was going to say, I think they were both 97 though, right?
No, it was actually 92 or 3. 92.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
I remember X-Men started within a few weeks of Batman, I remember. And this was maybe a year later. I'm not sure. But anyway, I mean, it's an interesting idea, but the fact that it's so repetitious kind of ruins it. And here, Jeff, you've only seen 3 episodes, and you can see how there's all these people around, and they're in almost every episode. And it kind of drags it down a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and like I said, you never really get any farther with any, like in those three episodes we watched in a row. We never really got any further along on the Mary Jane storyline at all, but it was intertwined through the whole thing.
Right.
And they're adding extra layers to it, which you're like... So I don't want to bury the whole thing because it may come out at the end if I watched the rest of that whole season.
Sure.
But I mean, just watching it in a 3-episode chunk, not a lot really happens in those 3 episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
Of meaning. Like, there's all these, like... It's almost like watching an episode of CSI where you're getting these characters for one episode... They resolve their deal and they move on and you never see or hear from them again, but the main characters are still consistently there in the episode.
Actually, you know what? That's a really good point, and it's a part of a larger issue with like superhero comics, right? Because these characters do continue on for sometimes 70 or 80 years now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And some people think that they should age and they should get married and they should die and get replaced. And I'm always, of the opinion you should just keep them young. But what you said is a way to do both. You keep the main character kind of the same, and you just bring in either supporting characters or every episode, if you have a different crime committed, then those characters can change and those characters can die, right?
Right.
And at the end of that story, they can disappear and the new ones come in. So that's a way to do both.
You could kill them or even put them in jail or something. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
A jail with a roof, with a hole in the roof, so in case you need to kill in or out, you just take off out through the roof.
Right. Okay, so here's the thing. This episode did have... Okay, Josh, the guy... Yeah. Smythe is the weird-looking guy with the thing sticking out of his shoulders, right?
Right.
What a crappy design. I'm sorry, but I don't like him in this at all. Jeff, what did you think of that character? Aleister Smythe.
I thought he was supposed to be like some kind of seahorse or something. But then when like lasers started coming out of his shoulder holes, I didn't really know what the hell was going on at that point.
Right.
Yeah. It is a very... Because he's supposed to be a cyborg, I guess. But because they made like his cyborg parts the same exact color as his skin, it does kind of just look like some sort of like seahorse scorpion thing coming out of his shoulders.
Right.
I never really understood his whole deal. Like why he looked like this.
Right. I don't get it at all.
Yeah.
Because his father's the one that designed the Spider Slayer, right? Or am I wrong?
Right. He's the one that was in the wheelchair at the beginning of the series. Working with Kingpin. And then he becomes the this version of Aleister Smythe after like becoming kind of like a cyborg type character. He's also actually he's also in the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
Played by who?
By BJ Novak.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
In the second Amazing Spider-Man, he's working at Oscorp and he runs into Electro in the elevator and all that. So that's actually Aleister Smythe. So
Okay.
Pretty interesting that they were planning on doing something with him in the movies.
I want to point out that this version of Aleister Smythe is played by Maxwell Caulfield, who we all know from Grease 2. Jeff, do you remember Grease 2?
No,
movie?
I remember Grease 1. That's about it.
Okay, Grease 2 was horrible, but I love it. And he was the lead actor, and he was terrible. But at least he still had a career up until this point, right? So that's good. But anyway, okay, so now we're going to jump to the third episode we reviewed, which is, just for those uninitiated, let's give the full title. Partners in Danger, Chapter 6, The Awakening.
Right.
And Jeff, Josh, since you're the only one with any memory, do you want to summarize this one? Because I definitely can.
I mean, I kind of did already.
Okay.
By the way, Deborah's been in all of these episodes, and I really like her in this series.
So do
especially compared to the comics. Like, she's an actual character. She has like a motivation to be doing all of this stuff. Like, at first, something went missing in the lab, so she was there trying to figure it out during the Kraven arc. And then I can't remember how she was tied into the last one, but then this one, she had a crush on Morbius when they were in school together. So she has like some sort of like personal connection with him and is trying to like find him. And that's how Morbius is like found again and is introduced in this episode. So
remember, I believe she found that lock of hair from
Kraven.
Gloria's
converted
monster body. What's her name? Cyclops?
Calypso.
Calypso, yeah.
Yeah.
So they found a chunk of hair. That's why they were on her trail.
Right.
We should also quickly point out, I just want to say one thing, Jeff. In the movies, you always think of Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy, but in the comics, for the first 25 years, Peter was dating 25 different girls.
Yeah.
There was always someone different. Then, like, they, at the last minute, shoehorned in Mary Jane to come back and get married. So, for a long time, like 5 years, he was dating Deborah Whitman in the comics. So, it's
but in the comics, is Peter a nerd or a jock or what is he?
It's funny because in the first few years, he's a total nerd, like really skinny with glasses. Then, when a new artist took over, they kind of beefed him up and got rid of the glasses and made him look, I guess you could say, like a jock, like a handsome.
Yeah, he looks like
man.
this when he's in college in the comics as well.
Yeah. Some artists make him look nerdier, but most artists draw him kind of like this now.
Yeah.
But originally, he was definitely like skinny and nerdy with glasses. He looked just like the guy who drew him.
Right, because they treat that character like he's a skinny, nerdy guy, but he's not. He looks like someone who could actually beat the shit out of somebody, and they're making it seem like he needs superpowers to do it. And meanwhile, he looks like an imposing guy if you look at him in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's one thing I love about the movies is all three actors look like Tobey Maguire is handsome but total geek. Andrew Garfield's skinny and nerdy, and Tom Holland is like really young looking and nerdy, and that's what I like. The casting is all good for those characters, those actors. Anyway, sorry, Josh.
Yeah, no, I mean, so Morbius is uncovered, and he's like mutated into this like ultimate vampire form, where he's closer to a bat than a human at this point. Right. So he's brought back to New York, and they're studying him. Kirk Connors gets involved, and then he is kidnapped by Kingpin and the gang, and they want to like take his DNA and like his immortal part of being a vampire and use that so they can live forever and rule New York City for the rest of time. And I mean, Spider-Man stops him at the end. I don't know. I mean, like, Black Cat's here again. She's Black Cat. So Felicia Hardy and Michael Morbius have a relationship. They've had it at the beginning of the show when they're first introduced, and then they kind of have history together when Morbius turns into a vampire. So there's a lot of stuff going on with them as well this issue, or this episode. There's like a couple of like Beauty and the Beast type moments where like Felicia is trying to save him from turning into a monster further and like revealing that she's Felicia and not the Black Cat, and it's kind of like going back and forth. And then there's this plan at the end to use this weapon that's going to take the vampireness out of Michael Morbius. and save him forever. And at the end, Felicia doesn't have the heart to do it. I don't know why, because as far as I could tell, there were no consequences. He was just not going to be a vampire anymore.
Right. Good point.
And Felicia's like, no, I don't have the heart to do it, and then throws the gun at the end, and then Morbius is like, all right, peace, and runs away. And then that's really kind of it that happens in this issue.
So, okay, here's my thing. Was the Shocker in this one, or was he in the last one?
He's in this one.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I'm actually looking at these episodes as we're talking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but do they not bring in the Shocker kind of just like right in the middle of action? He kind of just walks into this. I think that is really cool because I don't need a lot of explanation or setup. I like when, you know, in a lot of these superhero movies, especially Batman, they try to fit in all these multiple characters. And if you remember Batman Returns with Penguin and Catwoman and Michael Keaton, they each had to have their half-hour-long origin. I like in the new one how it's like you have Falcone as the boss, and then Penguin's just one of his guys, and Catwoman just works at the same bar. And I like the fact that if you were to have, say, Kingpin or Green Goblin as the main bad guy, maybe the Shocker could be his henchman, or someone else could be guarding the door. You don't have to give them all an origin or an explanation. It's just a quicker way to just throw them into the action, and I thought that was really cool. I mean, as far as the Shocker's design, it's very hokey, but I still love it. It's
very close to the comics.
It's exactly like the comics, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I kind of like that. I just feel like there were already so many characters that they didn't need to add Shocker. You know what I mean? Right. Like, if it was just Kingpin being like, I need to get Morbius, and then like shaking his fist to the sky or whatever, and then Shocker shows up as like a hired goon and then gets him, and then that was kind of it. I think it would be fun, but I don't know. It just feels like there's way so much going on. If we watch
episode 7, 8, and 9, I'm assuming based on his showing up there that he's going to be central to probably at least the next 1 or 2 episodes, I would think. It seems to me that the way they brought him in was like they're writing him in the end of this episode, they'll write him through a couple and then out on another one and bring someone else in kind of thing, but I don't know. I've only seen 3 episodes of the show, so I don't really know.
Right. I think I'm not sure. Yeah.
I don't think he's ever a major character, but yeah, I know what you're saying though. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm scrubbing
I don't know.
through.
Now, here's another question.
I don't see Shocker, but
did you notice, Jeff, that what's his name? Morbius they call him a vampire, but they never use the word blood. They say plasma.
And he's like, oh, I'm so hungry for plasma right now. Oh, I'm so hungry.
And
when he's like when he's going to attack those teenagers in the park.
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to, but I'm so hungry.
Yeah, and then but he never uses his fangs. He uses the suction cups on his hand. So ridiculous, eh?
Well, I'm sure it has to do something with standards and practices for what you're allowed to teach, what you're allowed to be thrown in front of kids' faces.
But what kid does not already know that Dracula or a vampire uses his fangs to bite people's necks? Like, everyone in the world knows that, right? So it just seems like, even if they don't show it, at least suggest it, right? I don't know. Right. I just think it's ridiculous.
I even thought that was strange with the blaster pistols, because it just seems so out of it. Like, when the first time they pull out guns and they're shooting blaster pistols.
Right.
And all the thugs are wearing ski masks, and they're all built like Kingpin, but they're wearing ski masks.
Yep.
How he just comes in and beats the shit out of all these henchmen by himself. Same with her.
Yeah,
she's beating the hell out of like 5 henchmen in a row all by herself.
What did you think of the design of Morbius? He started out as kind of like just a white-skinned vampire, and then he became like the Man-Bat from Batman. Did you like that?
Yeah, because I think because when he's in that whitish blue form, he reminds me of like something from Twilight, where he's like this emotional vampire. But when he was like the blood sucker up in the tree trying to eat all these teenagers and stuff, that's more of like I don't know, more scarier than especially when the guys show up and they're gonna kidnap Morbius, and then all that chaos happens with all the lasers and all that stuff. Now, was this the same episode where they lured is this the same episode where they caught the girl and Spider-Man came to save her and then ended up getting caught himself? Is this the same one?
No, that was the
That was the
previous
last
one.
one, yeah.
Yeah. Because so here's what I don't understand. So when they were trying to find Spider-Man to get him to try to lure Vulture and Scorpion to them, and he sends those like spider catchers after him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So like, what I don't understand is why don't these guys, if they're gonna develop a weapon that catches Spider-Man, why don't they just use it to end Spider-Man? Why do they got him running tasks and stuff with this equipment?
Hey, that's the mystery of every superhero story, right?
I know, that's
They
what I
just
love
want
about
to
it.
fight. They don't want to actually kill anybody, right? That'd be
And they want to take their powers. That's all anybody is all about, is taking everyone else's powers from them.
Right.
And most of the time, it's stuff that, like, I wish someone would take that power away from me. Like, imagine if you were a blood-sucking vampire. You'd almost wish someone would come and take that away from you.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't understand why she doesn't at the end.
Right.
And they always seem to have some sort of tool, antidote, gun, weapon that reverses. There's always something that's always able to reverse something, and it always ends up in some sort of like Mr. Furley type. We can't really actually have that happen. We've got to have a bunch of hijinks happen instead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, I found out the name of that character who looks like Two-Face. It's Herbert Landon.
Landon, right?
And he first appeared in the comics in 1994 in Spider-Man: The Mutant Agenda #0. That's why I know nothing about him, because that's after I stopped buying Spider-Man.
So he...
Yeah.
Oh, in 94, you said?
Yeah, 94.
Oh, okay.
So...
Interesting.
Oh, but you know what? I think he first appeared in the comic strip as well, before that.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so I'm not a fan of this character only because he looks exactly like Two-Face, right? Like, why even have this character? But whatever. So yeah, this episode, again, it's like you said, it's hard to distinguish between each one. Like, they kind of all run together, which is kind of like the downside of continuing the story through every one, because it's hard to tell them apart. So I mean, I enjoyed this one just as much, but as you said, they all have Spider-Man and Black Cat, they all have the Kingpin, I think, right? So they all...
I don't even know if I think it's only the last one that has Kingpin, but...
Okay, I'm just mixing it up with the other
It's
100
just,
episodes.
I just feel like, yeah, it was very much like Spider-Man and Black Cat are having this, like, will they, won't they thing, and then they need to find some sort of antidote to give to somebody, or somebody's looking for, like, an antidote for, or like a potion for eternal life.
Right.
Like, there's no, I don't know. It's, yeah. And there's just, they're, particularly the last two are just so crammed with characters that people are, like, saying their lines almost over top of other people.
Yes.
And while the animation is pretty good for the most part, the editing is so rough that things are kind of like happening. There's no like pauses between actions.
Yes.
So like somebody will pull out a gun and then shoot it, and then somebody grabs it and then throws it out. The action is just so fast paced because it almost feels like they had a script for the episode and they're like, oh, it's way too long. So they're like, well, I guess we'll just have everybody say their lines extremely fast and edit it all together so it fits into the 22 minutes rather than like cutting out what's not needed.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, that's the thing. I mean, this show is definitely loved by fans, but it does not get nearly as much respect as Batman does. And there's probably a reason for that, right? Like, I do have a lot of fun watching it, but there's obviously flaws in the style of the storytelling and all that. So.
But even like the Batman, the animated series, only really had iconic characters in it. Like, you guys love this Spider-Verse, and you guys still don't even know who half the people are. So how is someone like me who doesn't follow it supposed to know who Landon or any of these other people are?
That's a good point.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I actually think that what happened was they just had such great writing on the Batman the Animated Series that they became iconic characters. Like Mr. Freeze was a stupid like C/D list villain that nobody cared about. He was in the background, like nobody knew who he was. Yeah. And then they used him in an episode, and then they gave him an actual backstory, and they gave him like a very interesting thing to do and motivation. And that's probably the best episode of the animated series. But I think they just wrote a good script and they gave it time and like thought it through. And then now Mr. Freeze is an iconic Batman villain that everybody can probably name if somebody were to show it.
When did the Arnold movie come out in 95? Comparison to that?
It was after the cartoon started.
Yeah.
So like how long after?
Like, well, the cartoon started in 92, so it was 5 years later.
Oh yeah.
So it was definitely
97.
Yeah. The other thing too is that the Riddler was made famous by the Adam West TV show. But the cartoon definitely made Mr. Freeze famous, as well as even Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy was big in the comics, but never as big as she was as when she was in the cartoon. That's why you see all these girls dressing up as Poison Ivy now.
I mean, Harley Quinn was introduced in that show.
Yeah, introduced in the cartoon.
Like her first ever appearance was in the cartoon, and she became like a
giant.
Yeah.
She's almost number 4 in that universe as far as merchandising goes, I think.
Right,
if you look at DC
right?
Universe,
Himself?
you look at Batman, Superman, Joker, Harley Quinn, basically. Those are Mount Rushmore of what people would know.
And even for women, like if you talk about women in DC, it's like Wonder Woman is the only one that could maybe be more popular than Harley Quinn. But she's probably the most popular, right? For women, for sure.
Yeah, I think the girls like Harley and the women like Wonder Woman.
Sure, gotcha.
Because don't forget, too, Linda Carter, that was like our generation. And kids nowadays don't really get with Linda Carter. Linda Carter looks like some like frumpy old housewife to the young kids nowadays. Speaking of which, who was that one woman in this character that was, I'm trying to remember what her deal is. She's with somebody, and she had like kind of like a frumpy sweater on and like long blonde hair, but she wasn't attractive. Who was that in this
was
thing?
that Aunt May? No, what do you mean?
No, she was younger.
Was she in this last episode?
Deborah Whitman, the one with glasses?
Yes, Deborah Whitman, yeah.
Oh, she was the one exploring the cave at the beginning, right?
No,
not
the one with the glasses.
Okay,
Okay, the
glasses?
one with the longer hair with like a orangey sweater. And she's
I'm looking at it right now. Hold on a sec here.
Trying to remember what her character was.
Yeah, I'm scrubbing through.
She's a human person.
It was in this last episode?
She might it be Black Cat's mom or sister or something?
Or maybe her mom in episode 5.
Okay.
Or maybe episode 4. But yeah, that's like the head of the Hardy Foundation.
Okay.
She's like a business suit, I think.
No, it's not her. It's like then it's not her. She's almost at the very end of the 3rd episode we watched.
She's at the end of the 3rd one. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay,
I think she has a love interest with not Morbius, but maybe somebody else. I'm trying to remember. But this show, like to kid, like so I'm 46. The kids that buy the Funko Pops off me that are in their like mid to late 20s are just head over heels for animated Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Like the figures, the Funko Pops, everything. Pardon?
Any version or this version?
It seems like this version. Is this considered Spider-Man the animated series?
Yeah.
Yeah, then for sure this version because they make all the retro figures now. They make the 6-inch figures. They do the Funko Pops. They do all that stuff of the Spider-Man.
No, because Josh, you watched this when you were growing up, right?
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense. See, for me, I would buy like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when we were kids, Jeff.
Right? Mm-hmm. Well, you know what else this cartoon also reminded me of? Do you remember a show called Mask?
Of course.
Oh yeah, of course I do. Oh my god, yeah.
A lot of the main characters in that were drawn very similarly to Mask, and a lot of the blasters and the explosions and the buildings and everything look very similar
Even
to the animation
kind of
on Mask.
That same
You know what?
vibe.
We actually had Kristen Siapas on our show, and she pointed out the animation reminded her of the Ghostbusters cartoon, the real Ghostbusters. And I looked it up, and they used some of the same studios, so it's probably
sense.
all the same guys, you know?
They must have just been cranking out content back then like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm. Right. Totally.
Making toys and making millions of dollars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, these had so many toys for sure.
So anyway, here's the thing. We usually talk for much longer, but we're missing two of our co-hosts. So G.I. Jolie and Bex Luthor could not be with us this week. So I think we're going to wrap up our discussion of these 3 episodes. So Jeff, my final question is, what was your impression overall of Spider-Man, the animated series?
At first, I thought it was going to be kind of campy. But you know what? I thought the actual, from what they tried to do, like, in trying to tell a adult themed story to, you know, preteens and teens in a very, like, no blood, no guns, no kissing, no, like, there's very few things you can hang your hat on this thing. And like I said earlier with the outer monologue, trying to fit an hour-long story into 20 minutes is like, but put it this way, the 3 episodes I watched, because I watched them one after another, it felt like I watched like an hour-long movie, which wasn't, you know, I mean, it didn't disappoint me. Like I didn't think it was a waste of my hour or anything like that. It actually intrigued me to wonder what happens in the upcoming episodes, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. And it's like, I don't know. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was a lot cheesier than I thought it was going to be. And it had a lot of like soap opera drama in between with these love stories that were so like pukey almost to the point where like, and even like all the stuff I said with Black Cat where she don't know what the heck she wants. She wants Morbius. She wants Spider-Man. She wants to make her dad proud of her. All this stuff, and I'm like, this chick needs to just pick one thing and go with it. Right.
I gotcha. So, are you going to be watching more Spidey? If we did not have you reviewing them on this podcast, would you be watching more Spidey?
I might actually watch some more of it. It wasn't cool. Put it this way, I've watched Simpsons in the last 20 years, so I've watched worse cartoons than that.
All right. So before we go, why don't you tell everybody about Junk Food Jeff? I know you said you're not really doing it anymore, but why don't you tell everybody really quickly what it is and what it's about?
Yeah, it's a Windsor, Detroit based, basically it's a Facebook page. Whenever I get any press releases or if I find out any news from sales reps and stuff like that about upcoming fast food, junk food, local Windsor, Detroit type stuff. I know I broke the news about the Verner's Black Cherry coming out that came out this week. That went like crazy super viral on my page. I made the announcement this week about the President's Choice. You know the President's Choice candy cane ice cream that comes out every year?
Yeah.
So this year they're bringing it back again, but they're also doing a cranberry vanilla ice cream with white chocolate crackle inside it, which sounds pretty delicious to me.
How the hell do you get these scoops though? Can you reveal your sources? Like how do you get these scoops?
50% of my stuff comes from press releases that I signed up for with these companies because I've been doing this for like almost 12 years at this point, Junk Food Jeff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I did the stuff on 89X, which really got me. That's when a lot of companies started reaching out once I was doing the Monday Morning Munchies on 89X until Bell sold that off. And then.
Yep.
And then after that, a lot of it is like I worked in retail sales for the last 40 years as well. So I've got a lot of connections with people that work at Kellogg's and Pepsi and Frito-Lay and Coke. And even still, I have I say my customers, but like people from Zayre's and Walmart and stuff who, when they get new information, can't help but stooge it off to me. And I don't mind sharing it with the masses.
Nice.
So it's fun and it's, I don't know. There's nothing really, it's nothing political. There's nothing like bad about my page if you think about it. There's no one argues, you know what I mean? The worst argument you get is that people say that, you know, I hate pineapple on pizza or something. It's like the worst kind of argument you have on on a junk food page. So it's fun if you're just going to sit on the toilet and scroll and see what kind of new crazy Pop-Tarts are coming out within the States for the next 3 months, you know.
That's a
Hop on my
review.
page. I'm updating it usually 2, 3, 4 times a day depending on what time I have left that day.
The most important question I have, and you've talked about this, but maybe the listeners don't know, can you get Mexican pizzas at Taco Bell yet? Have they come back?
Yeah, in the States they are back. So they came back as like a limited time. They sold out, And now I believe it's like September something. I'd have to pull the press release up. It's coming back again, and this time it's going to have like 3 different variations. They're going to do like a chicken bacon ranch one, and they're doing like a spicy chorizo one, as well as a regular one. I know you're not much of a meat eater, but the Mexican pizza is, knock on wood, coming back to the States at least for sure. And hopefully if they do that, it'll come back to Canada as well.
And what do you think about people that look down on Taco Bell because it's not authentic Mexican food?
I don't know if they were ever really trying to say that it was authentic.
Right.
Like, put it this way: if McDonald's started in Japan and it was the exact same formula, no one would say, "Oh, this is like a really crappy version of American food." Like, it is what it is.
Yes.
If you watch The Food That Built America, they do a really good episode about the guy who invented the taco.
Sure.
And he went and ate a taco at like an authentic Mexican stand.
Sure.
But they were using, corn, like soft corn tortillas and like gamier meats like goat meat and all this kind of stuff that didn't really appeal to like the American palate. Sure. So he knew how to take hamburger meat and use stuff like cheese, lettuce, tomato, sour cream that American people were more comfortable eating.
Right.
And he almost made like a bastardized version of it, but it's almost like his own, like, if you can call Texas Mexican food Tex-Mex, then you can call Taco Bell more like Amerimex, where it's like American/Mexican.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. I'm with you. I love real Mexican food. I've eaten Mexican food, but if I were to open my own Mexican restaurant, I would have authentic Mexican food and then versions of Taco Bell's,
But I mean, if you look at a lot of the Mexican restaurants that we have even in Windsor, they have like their authentic menu, and then they also have their like Americano taco, their nachos, quesadilla, 100%. And it's always on that 4th panel of the menu. It's almost like stuff like for my mom. Almost. So when my mom goes in there and doesn't recognize anything on the menu, she can just order a quesadilla.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Okay, so where can we follow you on social media then?
Yeah, on
Junk Food Jeff?
Instagram and Facebook at Junk Food Jeff. Twitter on Junk Food Jeff, but I don't really spend much time on Twitter. I think that's like the cesspool of the internet. Twitter's like the Star Wars bar of the internet. I hate it. I hate logging on. Twitter's the only place where you can post that, candy cane ice cream is coming back, and someone will tell you to go fuck yourself just for writing it. Like, it's the most vile place in the world. So I try to stay off there as much as possible. But yeah, I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I had that YouTube channel going, but it was like editing was hard, so I just lost my motivation for it when a 5-minute episode took me like half my day of my life. It just demotivated me to not doing the YouTube channel. But I got about 5 or 6 videos up on YouTube if you want to check it out. Junk Food Jeff also on YouTube as well. And who knows, that may come back if someone wants to offer to edit my videos for me.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us again. We'd love to have you back on in the near future if you're interested. Yeah,
sure. And if you guys ever want me back on, I'll gladly come back on. Just give me what to watch, and if it's at least if it's as fun as what we watched this time, it's not too bad. Well, maybe we'll have you read, because we usually read comics. We only do cartoons once every 3rd or 4th episode, so maybe next time you can do some comics with us. What do you think? Yeah, if you loan them to me and you let me bend the pages, then I'll gladly read it. You're on. All right, so Josh, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Please keep in touch. Let us know what you guys think about the podcast, and then also let us know what you guys think about the episodes and the comic issues we're talking about. You can find us anywhere you can find podcasts, so Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, anywhere you can find a podcast, we're there. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter at the Comic Book Syndicate, and everything that we post is also on the comicbooksyndicate.com website. It is comicbooksyndicate.com, correct? That's right, yeah. Okay. And not .gov, it's .com, definitely. Right, perfect. Yeah. .co.uk. So keep in touch. Let's keep that comics conversation going. All right, and next week, if everything goes according to plan, we'll have returning guest Cousin Brandon joining us. Ooh, perfect. Yeah, and we'll be reviewing Web of Spider-Man 51 called Wolves Bite Back.
Amazing Spider-Man 316, Venom is back, and Spectacular Spider-Man 151 with friends like these. So be sure to join us. And until next Monday, see you later.